Hello and welcome to the Heaven Bound Podcast. My name is Jason Harden. I'm here with Roger Schaus, and we're opening the Bible in search of fuel for your spiritual journey. This is where we talk about life the way it was meant to be and what it means to be a disciple of Jesus in the 21st century. Wherever you are, thanks for joining us on the journey today.
Well, welcome. We're glad to have all of our listeners with us. This month, we are looking at some Bible words. We're looking at words that matter, or words that call us to action. And so each Friday, we're picking a different word and kind of just looking at it through the scriptures and see how it calls us to action to become what God wants us to be. So in our first lesson last week, we talked about the word diligence and how God wants us to be diligent people. Today, our next word we want to look at is the word alert. And that's used several times in our Bible. And in our times today, we understand the call of being alert. Sometimes you can be in your basement watching a TV show and you're not really mindful what's going on outside, and all of a sudden the weatherman interrupts and there's serious storms in the area. And sometimes there's even a call that they're very close to where you live and you need to take shelter, they'll say. Those are alerts. You're driving down the highway and a police car with his lights is coming zooming by, and that grabs your attention. You have to become alert. You pull over to let him go by. So there's all kinds of little things like that in our physical world that we live in. Well, God has some of these things also in the spiritual world, and we need to pay attention to them because they're calling us to be alert. So one of them is found here in Matthew chapter 25. As Jesus ends the parable of the wise and foolish virgins, he ends by saying in verse 13 of Matthew 25, "Be on the alert then, you do not know the day nor the hour." Be on the alert. The idea of alert carries what ideas, Jason? What kind of, if you had to put some definitions behind alert?
Yeah. I think you have used a key word a couple of different times already, and that is attention. As you were describing that, I thought of Exodus chapter 9 in the heart of these plagues where the Lord had said to Moses, I want you to rise up early in the morning and go to Pharaoh and command him, let my people go. But also they need to know, listen to this warning. Behold, about this time tomorrow, I will cause very heavy hail to fall, such as has never been in Egypt from the day it was founded until now. There's the warning. And then listen to Exodus 9, verse 21. Whoever did not pay attention to the word of the Lord left his slaves and his livestock in the field. So there is someone who was not on the alert. And to your point earlier, they could have been, right? The warning was issued. I think the weatherman is a perfect example. In the 21st century, I was thinking about this with our most recent string of storms here in the last couple of weeks. We have so much more warning than grandparents, great-grandparents, generations who maybe were just out working in the fields. We know in many cases days in advance, many hours in advance. Hey, it could be getting dicey this afternoon. Be on the alert, right? And what does that mean? Well, I'm paying attention. There's information that is being shared. It is worth my attention, but as we use this phrase, you hear the importance. It is attention that I have to pay. No one can pay attention for me.
And that's so important because we can just kind of sleep through life. We can just be on the daydream or the autopilot, and the idea of alert kind of rattles us. It's not just a normal day, a normal situation. Several years ago, I was in Arizona, and a friend took me to a park, and there were signs there that says, beware of rattlesnakes. Well, you know what I think about snakes anyway. And then rattlesnakes.
Yes.
I never took the eyes off the ground, because I'm paranoid about snakes. And so you're alert. You're alert, and we pay attention to that, and that's the idea that God's calling us to. In Acts chapter 20, another example of this, the Apostle Paul was meeting with the elders of Ephesus. And as he goes through and talks about the need for them to be mindful of the things and to guard the flock which God has given to them, he says in verse 31 of Acts 20, therefore be on the alert, remembering that night and day for a period of 3 years I did not cease to admonish each one of you with tears. Be on the alert. Pay attention. Wake up. Be aware of what time it is when we think about not the clock on the wall, but the clock of our life. And to get about those things. And so again, the idea of opening up your eyes, the idea of looking and seeing the things before us, that's the call to be alert. One other passage I'd share, again, there's several of these alert passages, but 1 Peter 5, verse 8, we were just talking about this in our Wednesday podcast about the devil. Here, Peter says in 1 Peter 5, verse 8, be of sober spirit, be on the alert. Your adversary, the devil, prowls about like a roaring lion, seeking someone to devour. Now, if we were in Africa on a safari, and we got off that little Jeep that you ride on through there, and we decided we're just going to take a walk through lion country, that doesn't go well. We probably are not walking back, okay? And so the idea of being alert is so important. And so, Jason, let's talk about some areas where this is needful.
Yeah. I would begin where Proverbs chapter 4 begins, with our hearts. Proverbs chapter 4, verse 23 is that famous keep your heart or guard your heart with all vigilance, or your English translation might say watchfulness. What is watchfulness? Well, it's being on the alert, right? Think of a night watchman tasked with patrolling grounds and making sure there aren't any trespasses or break-ins. Think of a watchman on the walls of an ancient city in the absolute middle of the night when everybody else is in the city walls and they're fast asleep. What does that watchman need to exercise? Well, he needs to exercise vigilance. He needs to be on the alert. And that's what Solomon encourages us to do when it comes to our hearts. Guard your heart with all vigilance, for from it flow the springs of life. Like you said, we talked a little bit about this on Wednesday. If I just float through life, if I say whatever I want to say, whenever I want to say it, in whatever way I want to say it, then I'm going to get myself in trouble. It can affect me. It can affect my home life. It can affect my work relationships. It can affect an entire congregation of the Lord's people. If I just float through life, think of Proverbs chapter 6, where you've got this naive man who's just kind of walking down the road and he doesn't even know the sort of temptation that is about to hit him. And this alluring woman tells him that her husband is a long ways away. This is what she would like to do. They can absolutely get away with it. He is not on the alert, and Solomon says he doesn't even know until it's too late that it's going to cost him everything. And so our hearts, and we're not talking about physical heart disease. We're talking about the inner man, the inner woman, where we make decisions, where our allegiances really lie. Do I belong to God? Think of the words of Joseph when he was similarly tempted in Genesis 37. How can I do this great wickedness and sin against God? There is a heart that is on the alert. So I'd say right there is where we start on the inside. Where else would you go from there?
Well, and again, we need to be alert to the dangers and to realize, as God warns us in so many different places, that sometimes we can just walk blindly right into trouble, right into the devil's arms, because we're not paying attention. I think another great example as we think about this concept is in the Gospel of Luke, the man, as Jesus told the story, who had barns, and he was going to tear them down and build larger barns. And he had great plans and great goals, But the passage says, you fool, this very night your soul is required of you. Here was a man who did not know what time it was. And how when we're not paying attention, how when we're not alert, we don't know what time it is. You, as a parent, have those little ones in your home only for so long. And then they're going to grow up and move out. And if you keep kicking that can down the road, I know I need to be spending more time with them. I know I need to be teaching them. I know I need to be a better example to them. And we kick that can, and before long, they're 18, they're graduating, they're out of the house, and we've not brought them up in the Lord. What was the problem? We didn't pay attention. That was a problem. And we have a word for that today. It's called negligence. We neglected doing what was important. And so that is a vital thing. Our own souls can be that way. We know there's somebody that we need to apologize to. There's somebody that we need to forgive. And we just think, well, I'm going to do that. One of these days, I'm going to do this. And we don't realize what time it is. We're not alert. We're not paying attention. And sometimes that just gets away from it. I have stood many, many times at a casket and seen a son or a daughter in tears saying, I wish I had apologized to my dad. I wish I had said I'm sorry to my mother. They were going to do that, but they weren't alert. And time got by.
Yeah. I think of how Peter in 1 Peter chapter 4 calls us to arm ourselves. Arm yourselves with the thinking of Christ, he says. And in verse 3 of 1 Peter chapter 4, I think this is exactly what we're talking about. For the time that is past suffices for doing what the Gentiles do, living in sensuality, passions, drunkenness, orgies, drinking parties, and lawless idolatry. Paul says much the same sort of thing, right? That in times past, this is how we do, but now it is time to cast off the works of darkness and put on the armor of light. You just listen to those examples that Peter uses. These are not alert people, right? If our key word is being alert, well, people who are living in sensuality. That very idea means, well, I'm just doing what I want to do in the moment. I'll worry about the consequences later. Passions. What I feel matters more than what I know to be right. Drunkenness does not help us be more alert, right? There is a reason why we have legal limits for the consumption of alcohol in our society today. It's because there is an awareness that, okay, alertness goes down with intoxication. You look at all of these words, they're the very opposite of being alert. And Peter says the time is past. It is time to leave those things behind. It is time to be on alert. And I love how he attaches that to arm yourselves. Again, the idea of a watchman, someone out in the field in an army, and we don't know exactly where the enemy is going to come from. Alertness involves the real belief that, okay, I have an adversary and that adversary is dangerous. And if I am not on the alert, it can cost me everything.
Yeah, another word the Bible uses for this is being sober.
Yeah.
And sober-minded. And that really is not used in the context of being drunk. The opposite of drunk is being sober. That's how we use it in the context of alcohol. But being sober-minded means I'm paying attention.
Yeah.
The distracted driver. Okay, there's these signs that have messages on them. And one, as I drive home, says hands on the wheel, hands off the phone. Okay, why? Because if a person is texting somebody, they're FaceTiming somebody while they're driving, they're not paying attention. And that distracted driver is a danger to everyone. Now, another area of being alert, Galatians chapter 6, it's not always in the area of dangers and warnings and wrong, but also having our eyes open, paying attention to the needs about us.
Yeah.
Galatians 6 verse 10, so then while we have opportunity, let us do good to all people, especially to those who are of the household of faith. What I found out about opportunity is rarely does it come up and ring a doorbell and say, hey, here's an opportunity. You have to have your eyes open.
Was it Mark Twain who said something to the effect of, it shows up as work?
It does. It does. And so when you're in church services, and we're getting to those announcements, and those names are mentioned, the people who are sick or in a hospital or grieving, that's opportunity. Am I paying attention, or am I putting my Bible away and putting my pen up, getting my jacket and getting it's like the 2-minute warning, I'm getting ready to go, or do I pay attention? Those are people I need to be putting in my prayers. When I look at the back of the bulletin, here's all those names, people who have different needs, while we have opportunity. And so part of our fellowship, part of our strength and our support comes from rising up and helping when the need is there. And you'll find those who are always ready to do that. Why? Because they're paying attention. They are alert. They're sober-minded. Others, it passes right on by, and they say, well, I didn't know so-and-so needed something. Well, it was announced. It was a bulletin. Where were you? I guess I wasn't paying attention. Yeah. That's it. And that's it exactly.
The only other one, Roger, like you said, there are many that we could add to this, but the New Testament especially encourages us to be on the alert because we don't know when the Lord is going to return. You know, toward the beginning of this conversation, you highlighted a couple of passages along those lines. Let me just read a few verses from 1 Thessalonians chapter 5, where Paul is led by the Spirit to say, concerning the times and the seasons, brothers, you have no need to have anything written to you, for you yourselves are fully aware. Okay, so there's the warning, in a sense, that the day of the Lord will come like a thief in the night. While people are saying there is peace and security, some are going to pay attention to the prophecies, the warnings, the very words of Jesus, and others are going to have his coming come upon them as sudden destruction. Listen to verse 4. You are not in darkness for that day to surprise you like a thief. He says in verse 7, those who sleep, sleep at night, and those who get drunk are drunk at night. But since we belong to the day, let us be, you highlighted it a moment ago, let us be sober. We are to live as if Jesus Christ could come today, this very hour. And a good word to attach to, well, what does it mean to live like that? Is to be on the alert, be watchful, be vigilant, live as if you really believe he could come at any time, because he could, and when he does, now the way that I have lived will define my experience of eternity.
And again, I think a common analogy is the firefighter who's at the fire station, and he never knows when that alarm's going to go off. There's a need. There's a house on fire. There's been a car accident. And they scrambled, and I don't know if they still use that pole or not, but they scrambled down.
Surely somewhere they do.
And they put their equipment on, and they get in that fire truck, and off they go to go help somebody. But here's a firefighter, and the alarm's going off, the fire truck's firing up, they're ready to go, and he can't find his boots. And then he gets his boots on, and he can't find his helmet. And he can't, and you think, the house is burning down because we're waiting on you. And that guy won't make it in his job. He has to be ready. That's another key word, being ready. And so Jesus is not saying, mark this on your calendar. Here is when I'm coming. You just be ready. If I come today, you're ready. If I come 20 years from now, guess what? You're ready. You're ready because you are walking with Jesus. That is the idea of being alert, paying attention, and recognizing these wonderful things about us.
Yeah. To your point earlier about regrets, I have never talked to the person who is on their way out of this life who has ever said, I regret living as an alert person to the coming of Jesus. Jesus may not have come in my lifetime, but I don't believe any saint who lives with this sort of vigilance would ever at the very end of their life say, I wish that I had not been alert. No, we're not going to have those sorts of regrets, because these are words that move us in the right direction. So we've talked about diligence. If you missed that first conversation in this series, that was last Friday, May the 2nd. We've talked about being alert, and Roger, Lord willing, we've got a few more to go within this series. But I really appreciate you joining me today. We truly appreciate all of you for listening to the Heaven Bound podcast. We hope our conversation has helped you set your mind on things above and given you a little more fuel for the journey. Always remember, when you're walking with Jesus, you're heaven bound, and the best is yet to come.